For millennia, it has haunted the human imagination, a story of a magnificent island civilization, a paradise of wealth and power, swallowed by the sea in a single, terrible day and night. This is the legend of Atlantis. But what if it isn't just a legend? What if it is the faint, distorted echo of a real apocalypse, a memory of a lost world and the cataclysm that erased it from history? This is the story of a Bronze Age superpower that vanished at the height of its glory, and the colossal volcano that may have forged one of our most enduring myths. This is the story of the Minoans. Welcome to Echoes of Time. Today, we journey back more than 3,500 years to the sparkling blue of the Aegean Sea. Here, on the island of Crete, a remarkable civilization flourished. They were not the Greeks of Athens or Sparta that we know from the history books. They were older, more mysterious. We call them the Minoans, and for centuries, they were the masters of their world. For millennia, it has haunted the human imagination, a story of a magnificent island civilization, a paradise of wealth and power, swallowed by the sea in a single, terrible day and night. This is the legend of Atlantis. But what if it isn't just a legend? What if it is the faint, distorted echo of a real apocalypse, a memory of a lost world and the cataclysm that erased it from history? This is the story of a Bronze Age superpower that vanished at the height of its glory, and the colossal volcano that may have forged one of our most enduring myths. This is the story of the Minoans. Welcome to Echoes of Time. Today, we journey back more than 3,500 years to the sparkling blue of the Aegean Sea. Here on the island of Crete, a remarkable civilization flourished. They were not the Greeks of Athens or Sparta that we know from the history books. They were older, more mysterious. We call them the Minoans, and for centuries, they were the masters of their world. Their grand, labyrinthine palaces were centers of art and commerce, adorned with vibrant frescoes depicting a people in harmony with nature. Their powerful fleet controlled the sea lanes, their trade networks stretching from Egypt to the shores of Europe. They were a sophisticated society, creators of breathtaking art and complex architecture, a beacon of the Bronze Age. And then, they were gone. For centuries, their disappearance was one of history's greatest enigmas. Their palaces were abandoned, their culture faded, and their power was broken, seemingly overnight. What could topple such a dominant civilization so completely? For a long time, the answer lay buried, not on Crete, but 100 kilometers to the north, under a thick blanket of white ash. Today, we call this island Santorini. In the ancient world, it was known as Thera. And it was here, on this volcanic island, that the key to the Minoan puzzle was waiting. In the late 1960s, archaeologists began to unearth something extraordinary from beneath the layers of pumice and ash. It was not just a collection of artifacts, but an entire city, perfectly preserved. They called it Akrotiri. Walking through its excavated streets is like stepping into a ghost town. Multi-story buildings still stand, their walls decorated with stunningly detailed frescoes of fishermen, leaping dolphins, and exotic landscapes. Pottery and furniture sit where they were left. It is a chilling snapshot of a thriving, bustling city on the very brink of annihilation. But unlike Pompeii, no human remains were found. The people of Akrotiri, it seems, had a warning. They knew something terrible was coming, and they fled. They would never return. The warning signs would have been unmistakable. Earthquakes would have shaken the island for weeks, even months. Plumes of smoke and gas would have billowed from the island's central mountain. Then came the eruption. Sometime around 1600 BCE, the volcano at the heart of Thera exploded with a force hundreds of times more powerful than the atomic bomb. It was one of the most violent geological events in recorded human history. The very center of the island collapsed into the sea, creating a massive, flooded caldera. A column of ash and rock was blasted nearly 40 kilometers into the sky, so vast it would have blocked out the sun and altered the climate across the region. The sound of the explosion would have been heard thousands of kilometers away. For the Minoan civilization on Crete, the apocalypse arrived not with fire, but with water. The collapse of the volcano displaced a colossal volume of seawater, unleashing a series of tsunamis that radiated across the Aegean. Waves, perhaps tens of meters high, would have raced towards Crete at the speed of a modern jetliner. They would have slammed into the northern coast, where the Minoans' main ports, cities, and naval bases were located. Their legendary fleet, the source of their power and wealth, would have been splintered into driftwood. Coastal towns and settlements, the lifeblood of their maritime empire, would have been scoured from the earth. Following the waves came the ash. A thick, suffocating cloud descended upon the eastern half of Crete, blanketing the island in a layer of fine, toxic dust. Crops would have failed, livestock would have perished, drinking water would have been contaminated. The Minoans, a people who drew their strength from the sea and the soil, found both turned against them in an instant. This brings us to the first major theory in the fierce scholarly debate over their fate, that the eruption of Thera single-handedly wiped them out. In this view, the Minoan civilization was dealt a mortal blow from which it could never recover. A combination of cataclysmic tsunamis, agricultural collapse, and the psychological shock of a world plunged into darkness was simply too much to overcome. The Minoan apocalypse was swift and total. But, as archaeologists dug deeper, a more complex picture began to emerge. Evidence suggested that some Minoan sites on Crete were not destroyed immediately after the eruption. Life, it seems, went on, at least for a time. This has given rise to a second, competing theory. The volcano was not the killer blow, but the catalyst for a slow and painful decline. In this scenario, the eruption critically wounded the Minoan Empire. Their navy was shattered, their trade routes disrupted, and their agricultural heartlands poisoned. Their economy collapsed, and their centralized authority, centered in the great palaces, began to crumble. They were a giant brought to their knees, left vulnerable and exposed. And waiting in the wings on mainland Greece was a rising power, the Mycenaeans. They were a different people entirely. Where the Minoans were artists and traders, the Mycenaeans were warriors. Their culture was defined by citadels, bronze armor, and conquest. For centuries, they had lived in the shadow of Minoan dominance. Now, with the masters of the sea crippled, their opportunity had come. Archaeological evidence shows an increasing Mycenaean presence on Crete in the decades following the Thera eruption. New weapons, new burial customs, and a new script known as Linear B, an early form of Greek, begin to appear. It seems the Mycenaeans didn't need to launch a full-scale invasion. They may have simply stepped into the power vacuum, taking control of a society already broken by natural disaster. The Minoan civilization didn't just vanish, it was absorbed. This is where the story turns from history to legend. Almost 1,200 years after the Thera eruption, the Greek philosopher Plato wrote of a story he had heard, an account passed down through generations. He told of a mighty island nation called Atlantis, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules. It was a marvel of engineering and wealth, a naval power that ruled a vast empire. But its people grew arrogant, and in a single day and night of misfortune, the island of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea. For centuries, this was dismissed as a philosophical fable, a cautionary tale about hubris. But could Plato's story be the final, distorted echo of the Minoan collapse? The parallels are compelling. Plato describes Atlantis as an island nation with a powerful navy that dominated its region, just like the Minoans. He speaks of a civilization with advanced architecture and a rich culture, again, just like the Minoans. Most strikingly, he describes its sudden and catastrophic destruction by earthquakes and floods. This sounds uncannily like the fate of the Minoan coastal cities in the face of the Thera tsunamis. Of course, the details don't all match. Plato placed Atlantis in the Atlantic, and his timeline was thousands of years off. But the video description reminds us this was an oral history passed down for 1,000 years. Imagine the story of the Thera eruption, told by terrified Minoan survivors who fled to Egypt, a major trading partner. The Egyptians, known for their long historical records, could have preserved the tale. Centuries later, the Athenian statesman Solon is said to have heard the story from Egyptian priests. From Solon, it passed down to Plato. Over a millennium of retelling, details would have shifted. Names would be forgotten, locations confused, and timelines exaggerated. An island in the Aegean could easily become an island in the vast, mysterious Atlantic. The essence of the story, however, remained. A great civilization, masters of the sea, destroyed by a cataclysm. So we are left with a powerful possibility. The enduring legend of Atlantis may not be a myth about a lost continent, but a fragmented memory of a real Bronze Age superpower erased by one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in human history. We are sifting through geological data from the seabed, archaeological findings from Crete and Santorini, and the faint whispers of ancient texts, all to separate historical fact from legendary fiction. The evidence suggests that the Minoan world did not end in a single day and night, as Plato's legend claims. Their final demise may have come at the hands of Mycenaean conquerors, but it was the Thera volcano that sealed their fate. It broke their spirit, shattered their power, and left them defenseless. It was the beginning of their end. The ruins of Akrotiri remain a silent testament to their world, a moment frozen in time before the sky fell and the seas rose. The story of the Minoans is a sobering reminder that even the most advanced and powerful civilizations can be rendered helpless before the immense forces of our planet. Their culture, their art, and their palaces are echoes of a time long past, but their story resonates with us today, perhaps because it lives on, disguised as the myth of Atlantis. It's a tale of a golden age lost, a paradise drowned, a warning that has echoed through the ages. How many other legends that we dismiss as mere fantasy are, in fact, the distant, distorted echoes of a forgotten truth?